when you see the frustration over Ukraine, regardless of how you think about this, here's what you need to know in terms of the facts. In the beginning, everybody was kind of willing and ready and able to help Ukraine. And now if you look at the Gallup poll just recently released, you see a division there. People are less enthusiastic, right? They're just kind of like, wait a second, why is this still going on? Why hasn't it ended? And their support is really eroding. And that's for a variety of reasons. I mean, one of which is inflation, right? When eggs cost 50% more, you say, wait a second, are my tax dollars going to be going over to support Ukraine? Do I really care about this? What about our border? Well, apparently, Ukraine is our border. Just listen to this representative from Virginia.
Some say, well, we have to deal with our border first. The Ukrainian-Russian border is our border. It's the border between...
So if you didn't know that, oh, stupid you. The reason we need to protect it is because it's our border. I mean, forget about our actual border, right? So people look at this and they see the corruption that's going on. You had to fire the defense head there in Ukraine, as well as the deputy defense head. And consequently, look at these numbers. Again, according to Gallup, we've seen a real erosion in terms of where people are coming out. Right now, 77% of Democrats actually believe that we should help Ukraine and send money. You know, it's not 100%, interestingly. I mean, there's still like quite a few people, even in the Democrat Party, that aren't fans of this. You get 45% of Republicans that are in agreement and 47% of independents. So not everybody is like in line with this. So why is it? I mean, my view is people are not willing to just roll out the red carpet for Ukraine and spend all this money because they don't feel like they really know where it's going. It feels like a big sinking hole, right? You're just putting money in. You don't trust that the Ukrainians are doing what they should with the money. You don't trust that the situation is stable enough that we're really going to win this. And it feels like it's just going to be like worse than Afghanistan all over again. But interestingly, some politicians, one being Mitch McConnell, say they know why people aren't really supporting the Ukraine effort. This is fascinating to me, absolutely fascinating, because he wants to blame one journalist, one single journalist. No wonder he got fired. I mean, he had Schumer against him and Mitch McConnell against him. This is unbelievable. I mean, this journalist is not even at Fox News anymore. But Mitch McConnell says the reason Americans are not backing Ukraine the way he wants them to, it's all because of Tucker Carlson. I'm like, listen, Tucker's a big deal and all. But Mitch McConnell, if you knew how to do your job, that shouldn't be a factor. Like, if you could actually do your job, you'd be able to convince other members of the Senate and of the House. You'd be able to convince them that this is really well worth their doing. If you could do your job, you would be able to get on television and sell this to the American people so they understood why we were there. But you're not very good at your job. And apparently, Tucker has a point of view, and he's pretty good at communicating it. So maybe you need a little, sort of tutorial, presentation skills, whatever it takes. You got to lay out your argument and do a better job at delivering it. I mean, it's like debate, the debate club, and Tucker's winning it all day long because Mitch McConnell and everyone there that believes in this somehow doesn't know how to actually convey their message. So that's his failure, not Tucker's. You can't blame a lack of support entirely on one person. It's just bonkers to me. And yet this is what he's doing. Watch.
You've been probably one of the most ardent backers of Ukraine in the Senate here. But what took so long to get some of these other 8 Republicans persuaded to your position? Or was it the overall nature of this bill and what was lost in that time period for Ukraine?
Well, that's a good question. You already know the answer. I think the demonization of Ukraine began by Tucker Carlson, who, in my opinion, ended up where he should have been all along, which is interviewing Vladimir Putin. And so he had an enormous audience, which convinced a lot of rank and file Republicans that maybe this was a mistake. I think the former president had sort of mixed views on it. We all felt that the border was a complete disaster, myself included. And Chad, you remember covering the phases we went through. First, there was an effort to make law, which requires you to deal with Democrats. And then a number of our members thought it wasn't good enough. And then our nominee for president didn't seem to want us to do anything at all. That took months to work our way through it. So we ended up doing the supplemental that was originally proposed, which dealt with not all problems. It didn't solve the border problem, but
Gosh, he
certainly
feels old, doesn't he?
addressed.
It's what I was saying earlier about the political class. I mean, they're all so darn old and they're just killing off their young, so nobody else gets a chance. But Mitch McConnell, I'm sorry, you got bigger problems than Tucker Carlson. You know what? You got problems because you can't communicate. Heck, you got Mike Pence out there, who I just got to assume the guy was not listening to the question at all. He's like, I've interviewed him many times, and he's very highly programmed. Donald Trump will listen to the question, and his problem is he actually answers it. And that gets him in trouble, right? He actually says exactly what he's thinking, and he answers your question. But Mike Pence has his talking points, and that's all he's sticking to, and that's all. He's not going anywhere else. And so he got basically his entire political career ruined forever by Tucker Carlson. I still would not blame people's lack of enthusiasm for Ukraine on Tucker, but nonetheless, this is a winner. Remember, let's take you down memory lane to see this.
January, we'll let somebody transfer some jets.
I'm sorry, Mr. Vice President, have you, I know you're running for president. You are distressed that the Ukrainians don't have enough American tanks. Every city in the United States has become much worse over the past 3 years.
Yeah.
Drive around. There's not one city that's gotten better in the United States. And it's visible. Our economy has degraded. The suicide rate has jumped. Public filth and disorder and crime have exponentially increased. And yet your concern is that the Ukrainians, a country most people can't find on a map, who've received tens of billions of U.S. tax dollars, don't have enough tanks. I think it's a fair question to ask, like, where's the concern for the United States in that?
Well, it's not my concern. Tucker, I've heard that routine from you before, but that's not my concern. I'm running for president of the United States.
I mean, oh my gosh. How could you ever say it's not your concern? It's not your concern to care about American cities. What the heck was going on, Mike Pence? Whoa. Listen to the question next time. Listen to the question. I'll tell you, I credit Tucker. He must have gotten him so flustered that he couldn't even think straight. Mike Pence is like, I've heard that routine from you before. He didn't listen to the question. I mean, or he did, and that's really how he feels, which God help us all. Right? But that's how Americans feel. These guys feel, right? I mean, it's like, we got to do this. We're going to do this. And you have no say. They feel that you are too dumb to understand why we need. No, I'm like, you know what, guys? Sell your case. You want to do this? Sell it to the American people. You have to explain it to the American people. Because right now they feel a lot like MTG does right now. She was firing on all cylinders when she gave her speech on this one. Listen.
You see, the United States taxpayer has already sent $113 billion to Ukraine, and a lot of that money is unaccounted for. This is a continuance of a sick business model that the American government continues. The federal government continues to fund the military-industrial complex, and this is a business model that requires Congress to continue to vote for money, to continue to fund foreign wars, and this is a business model the American people do not support. They don't support a business model built on blood and murder and war
and she's not entirely
countries.
wrong. We played all of this for you yesterday, so you should go and listen to yesterday's show if you want to hear. It's a very powerful speech that she gives. She's not wrong in that when you look at the military complex and you look at some of these big companies like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman, they were kind of left for dead. These stocks were going nowhere. Rob and I over at 76 Research, 76research.com, again, a plug for that. We were looking at these numbers, and what we discovered was really prior to 2014, which was the Maiden Revolution. It's when the CIA actually put an op in there in Ukraine. These companies were like nowhere, like nobody wanted to buy them. And then all of a sudden they start going up, 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 up and away after 2014. So when MTG is talking about, gosh, this is really about feeding something else, you start to wonder. You think about what happened with Iraq, for example, and you really, lots of mistakes were made. Interestingly, as we talk about the Supreme Court, that's a good one, right? Could you go after Bush because he screwed up with Iraq and used faulty intelligence, or maybe deliberately wanted to go in there with Cheney, et cetera, to get their mission accomplished? I mean, there's a lot of questions about if you're going to go after presidents and hold them liable for mistakes that were made or things that were happening in real time. You could really open a can of worms. But again, I just point this out because Ukraine is not a perfect scenario, but they are not doing their jobs. They are not convincing the American people, and you have to ask why that is. Don't blame Tucker. I mean, I would blame TikTok before I would blame Tucker. Thank you very much. Okay. He's one person and he's not even at Fox anymore.